What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. I actually just did a video about this Diddler topic a few hours ago, but then when I watched it back, I wanted to clarify some things, and then I've also gotten some newer information that I didn't have in the video. So rather than have two videos about this topic on my channel, I just put that one on private, and now I'm doing this one. So bear with me. This one will probably be even a little bit shorter, even though it's going to have more information. So as of now, right, the Diddler's house, right, his houses, one in LA and one in Florida, were raided by Homeland Security, right, and they're looking for information regarding trafficking, and weapons and drugs and all kinds of stuff, right. So how did we get here, right? And there's a video of him pacing around, and there's different stuff, and I'm gonna kind of explain all that, right. So to understand what's happening now, I think we have to go back to November, right? So in November, his ex-girlfriend Cassie, right, she filed a lawsuit accusing him of trafficking, of domestic violence and all kinds of stuff. And he denied that any of that stuff happened, of course. But then he settled that case the next day. Right after that, he gets hit with another lawsuit, right? Lisa Gardner turns around and says her and her friend were hanging out somewhere, and they met Aaron Hall and Diddy. They were kind of chatting them up and flirting. They wound up going back to Hall's place. Um, Diddy kind of coerces the girl into getting down with them, whatever. They go in the room, they do their thing. When it's all said and done, she's kind of like out of it, not quite sure what just happened. And then Hall comes into the room and very much against her will, does some stuff with her. Then come to find out that Hall and Diddy had also done stuff against her friend's will in a separate room, right? So, start, bringing up all those allegations and suing him. Like the next day, Joy Dickerson Neal files a claim, right? Files a lawsuit against him and says that he art her, right? Diddy art her, and then had taken a video of it and shared that video among kind of the industry as a way to sort of discredit her and make sure that she stayed quiet. That same day, there's another case, right? A 17-year-old is out in Detroit at a lounge. She's a high school senior. Former Bad Boy president Harvey Pierre, at the time I think he was the president, and some other unnamed guy come up to her, kind of persuade her, oh, let's kick it. She's getting a little intoxicated. They jump on a private jet. They go to New Jersey. From New Jersey, they drive to go meet up with Diddy. She's heavily intoxicated. They give her all kinds of alcohol and drugs. And, she says she's beyond the point of being able to consent with anything, let alone to get gang-ard by these three dudes that are much older than her, right? So it's after all of that, right? Why did all that happen in November? Quickly, because some people are saying, oh, it's a money grab. These females, they just see that the Cassie lawsuit, got settled, and so now everybody's trying to cash in. No, right? They have this thing called the Adult Survivors Act in New York. And there was a law that was passed because prior to 2019, you could not sue somebody for those kinds of predatory acts if it was more than 3 years old. So then they passed a law and they said, you know what, we're going to extend that to 20 years, right? A bigger window. But it wasn't retroactive. So in 2019, they came out and they said, or the next year, 2020, whatever, they came out and said from November 23rd, 2022 until November 23rd, 2023, that is your 1 year window in which can look back and bring up charges that are, way in the past. Make civil lawsuits around that stuff. So that's why everything was sort of back to back there at the end of November last year, right? They had to meet within that deadline. So the most people really, like the most allegations made under that little 1 year window law was against the New York Department of Corrections, right? Because there was tons of instances and seasons over the last few years or last several years in which women in particular, but also some men, but women at some of the correctional centers in New York had said that they were abused by guards, right? And there's been lots of reporting done about it and stories and whatnot, but they had no get backs because of what the laws were in terms of the time frame. So that's really what the vast majority of these lawsuits that fell within that 1 year period have been about, right? But there's also been some high profile ones, right? Bill Cosby is kind of a well known one at this point. Former mayor of New York, Cuomo, right? He wound up getting caught up in it. Cuba Gooding Jr. Has been hit with a few. He settled one. I think he's got a couple more out there. He's also named by some people and stuff that that Diddy's been accused of, right? So it's a whole mess. But now that period is over. In February, there's another lawsuit comes out, and this is what kind of sheds light on the arrest that happened at the airport by the feds when Diddy was trying to dip in and go to the Bahamas, right? So in February, a producer, Little Rodney Jones, files a $30 million lawsuit, right? And he says that he worked with Diddy from September 2022 till November 2023 and on producing his new album. And during that time, he was harassed, he was groped, lots of stuff was done with him. I don't know what the dude's get down is. I will say, based on the pictures, he appears to have a little kind of feminine flair to him. I don't mean that in a judgmental way, just kind of from observation. So um, he was forced, right, by Diddy and others to engage in acts with females that he didn't want to. That he went out and found workers and brought in workers and other females that he was at parties and celebrations where those workers were given drugs without their knowledge and taken advantage of, all kinds of stuff. Says there was a time in which he was drugged and woke up the next morning in bed without clothes on next to Diddy and a couple workers. Doesn't know what happened. So he files this very explosive lawsuit that's gotten a lot of attention lately, right? And in that lawsuit, he names all kinds of names, right? It's not just Diddy. And one of the names that he mentions is this dude, Brendon Paul, right? Little white kid, kind of has a Justin Bieber look to him, I think. I don't know. Interesting. Maybe there's a type there. Um, but young looking white kid, right? And he in the lawsuit is accused of like, oh, that's the guy that handles all Diddy's guns and drugs, right? Well, they bust him at the airport, and he had shockingly uh, guns, drugs, not guns. He had some powder, right? Don't know how much, but he had some powder, some nose candy, and he has some THC candy, right? Both of those things are illegal in the state of Florida. So that's the image that you see of Diddy outside the airport, where he's kind of pacing around, stressing. It's because customs was running through his plane and had folks in there questioning them and whatnot. And he's just kind of out there like, man, they want him taking his phones and all that other stuff. Now, I guess the plan was for him and his family and some of his little entourage to go to the Bahamas for spring break, right? There was a plane that at one point on Sunday was in Sacramento, right? And the plane went from Sacramento to LA and then from LA to the Bahamas, right? And landed over there. That trip happened on Monday. Apparently, there was a second plane, and that second plane is the one that got stopped at the airport. I don't know if it was already at the airport in Florida. I don't know, but Diddy quite possibly could have access to two private jets to do that. A ton of money. And so what it seems like is maybe that plane that was in SAC went down to LA, picked up some of his people, and was going, and then they were supposed to ride in the second plane, but they got stopped because the feds are on them. And in the process of getting stopped, they search everybody's stuff. They search the plane. They find old boy with the stuff. He got cited. He went to the police station, got cited. He got released, right? I'm assuming bailed out. And so, so that's kind of where that goes. Now, lawyers, right? Diddy has hired two criminal defense attorneys in response to this fourth lawsuit, right, by the girl, right, the 17-year-old from Michigan, the allegations that she makes, right, because she was a minor at the time, right? So, but he hasn't been charged criminally with that. He's only been charged in civil court. It's her making an accusation that she was abused in this way, right? But he hired defense attorneys. One of them was this lady, Bobby Sternhelm. Now, Bobby Sternhelm defended Ghislaine Maxwell, right? The mistress kind of co-conspirator with Jeffrey Epstein, right? And we know the stuff that he was accused of. She wound up getting found guilty for a handful of those charges. The minimum was 30, the maximum I think was 60, and she got about 20, right? So in that Sturmhilm's defense, right? She's regarded as a feminist attorney, right? Very well known, very prominent, New York based lady. But she defended like folks from Al Qaeda. She's done international drug trafficking rings. She's handled some death penalty cases. So she's definitely experienced in a wide range of criminal law. But probably what she's most known for is defending Maxwell, right? And in her defense of Maxwell, her argument to the jury was, man, women keep getting blamed for the stuff that men do, right? And that's all that's happening here. Maxwell's getting blamed for the stuff that Jeffrey Epstein did. Epstein did all this stuff. She didn't. She ain't got nothing to do with it. She this, she that. Obviously, the jury didn't buy it because they found her guilty. But it's interesting that that was her argument, right? Is it obviously, she's not gonna be able to take the same approach here with Diddy, assuming that at some point he gets charged with criminal charges. But it's not necessarily common to hire high profile, especially criminal defense attorneys in a civil case, right? But once you get them on a team, then you kind of have them on the team for whatever gets thrown your way. The other one that he hired is this lady, Sean Hawley, right? She's based out of LA. She was an LA public defender for a long time. She went on to work with like Johnny Cochran. She worked on the OJ case. And now she does a bunch of celebrity stuff. And so she was doing the stuff with Lindsay Lohan. Like she kind of got famous being her attorney. But she's done all kinds of high profile stuff. So he's got a New York one and an LA based one, both women, right? But the hiring in particular of Bobby Sternhelm struck me as, okay, you're hiring somebody who just defended, and some would argue with a level of success, even though there was still a guilty, verdict, but a level of success um, against a woman who, again, was charged with things very similar to what people have accused the Diddler of in civil court, right? So where does it all go from here? Depending on what they found at these houses, will depend on the charges. I would expect Diddy to be charged in court sometime this year. I think a possible exception to that timeline would be if he starts cooperating very quickly, right? I had said in the last video I did, and I'll repeat it here. My hope in this, right? He's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Where there's smoke, there tends to be fire. There's a lot of steps happening here and a lot of things going on, which suggests that there is some criminal activity of some sort going on, right? It's not easy for Homeland Security to go get these warrants and these simultaneous raids. And I read somewhere that he was really thrown off. He did not even know there was an investigation. I find that kind of hard to believe, given all the lawsuits and the claims and the allegations. Like maybe he's just living in a bubble where he's thinking that this is just like some media hype or some trolling, but that's not at all what it is, right? So it's not surprising. The Manhattan DA's office, the federal office, has already said that they've talked to all the women that have filed lawsuits against him and several others, and they will continue to talk to them. It's interesting, though, the charges of the trafficking and guns and drugs. That's the stuff that Little Rod brought up in his case in February. So maybe they're running more on that because those are allegations that allegedly happened in a more recent time span, right? Just in the past year. And so I'm sure some of those claims were some of what the feds used to be able to go get those search warrants. I don't know if they have other stuff, but he put like pictures to do the Lil Rod. He put pictures and all kinds of stuff in his civil, filing. And so there's a lot to go on there. But again, I would expect him to get charged, or that the feds sit down with him and he starts giving up his list. And that's what I hope in all of this, right? Is assuming that Diddy has done something wrong, assuming that he has knowledge of things wrong that other people have done, right? Which would it would seem that way. Like this dude Harvey Pierre, the former Bad Boy executive, who was brought up in this case against the then 17-year-old. He's got other cases going too, right? Like he's had a couple other lawsuits against him of people that work with him at the label and women that said that he groomed them and then trafficked them and abused them and all this other stuff. So there's a swirl of allegations here. We didn't get a lot of the information from the Epstein case, right? Because that dude kind of ended himself or whatever happened. My hope is in this, and I'm sure that there's probably overlap between those celebrity circles, right? Those wealthy elites. Um, my hope is that people's covers really get pulled in a very clear way, not a bunch of conspiracy theory stuff and rumor stuff and the selective politicking of oh, Epstein was friends with the Clintons, which is true. And if there's any dirt there, it should be exposed. He was also good friends with Trump, and if there's any dirt there, it should be exposed. So my hope is people doing disgusting things get exposed for those things that they've done, held accountable in to whatever degree is possible, and that the victims of these abuses, right, which nothing will take away what's happened to them in the past, but that they will get some level of satisfaction by, instead of seeing all these powerful people get celebrated in politics or celebrated in media or celebrated in sports or whatever, that instead they will see them get cuffed up and dragged off, right? That's kind of my hope, in all of this. And obviously that these rings of people, right, that conspire with each other are held accountable. Another quick final point, I made this in the other video. There's some reports, I know it's like on Twitter and stuff, where they're like, oh, Prince, I think it was Prince Harry, one of them. He's named in the lawsuit. He's named in the Little Rod lawsuit with Diddy. He is named in there, but he's not accused of doing anything wrong, and he's not accused of being there when anything wrong happened. Little Rod tried to paint the picture of the power of Diddy, right? And how was Diddy able to kind of have this bubble around him, right? Where he's able to engage in these activities and kind of operate and all this other stuff. And so in trying to explain that, he used Prince Harry as an example of kind of Diddy's popularity and reach. So it wasn't anything specific to any wrongdoing. It was just, this is a powerful dude who hangs out with everybody from famous entertainers to Prince Harry to everybody else. And that leads people to not want to challenge him. That leads him to believe that he is above the law. That leads him to be able to throw these extravagant, parties and whatnot. So just to be clear, I don't know that Prince Harry's ever done anything like that or not. I'm not defending the dude, but there's a rush in some of the clickbait stuff that claims that he has a relevant place in there, and it really doesn't, right? Not in the lawsuit, not in those accusations. So there you have it. Not exactly the law I was planning on talking about on Tuesday, but yeah, it's not looking good for Diddy, man. I would expect him to get indicted. They said that they took a lot of phones and electronic devices, which is normally what the feds take when they raid somewhere. Last quick point I'll make, Keefe D, right? Just to connect all these dots. Keefe D, the dude that is arrested in Vegas, right, or in Nevada, for playing a role in the death of Tupac, which has been talked about ad nauseum. Like there's whole channels built around just that topic, so I won't get all into it. One of the things that he has pretty consistently said is that he believed, right, or that he was a part of Diddy calling the shot, Diddy putting money on Big's head and on Pac's head, and that he was supposed to get that money, and that money was filtered through this individual in New York, right? But that individual never actually paid him. So Diddy paid the money to the middleman, but the middleman burned him and instead built this big old club. That dude has since died. The feds tried to get Keefe to entrap that guy, to go there and have that conversation. But the dude was smart enough to not have this conversation with Keefe, who pops up out of nowhere and is like, hey, I'm trying to get back on with the hustle. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't do that anymore. Go talk to my kids. Maybe they'll help you, right? But Keefe has always said that Puff played a role in it. So who knows? Like this thing could spiral in a million different directions. But I think the focus is on the women and the kids, the young people, period. You know, whoever they were. And so that's it, man. Like I said, help others move with excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it. Help your community because they need you. And let's not get so starstruck by these people, man. People with a lot of fame and people with a lot of money do horrendous things, just like people with no fame and no money are capable of doing horrendous things. And their power and their celebrity should not stop them from being held accountable in some form or fashion, whether it's in court, out of court, however that plays out. There needs to be accountability for people that prey on children, and and I don't think that that should change based on somebody's celebrity status. There's already going to be a lot of people. Oh, he's being set up. What's conspiracy? Look, they're coming after him. Cut the noise. Cut the noise. Just where there's smoke, there's fire. All right. Anyways, you guys take care, man. Have a good one.